ever since Snapchat's IPO and then the subsequent boosting of its stock, I can't help wondering why the thing is so popular. I mean, it loses, what, $500 million last year and is deeply in debt and barely has any revenues, and I couldn't understand it. But then I'm not a good person to talk to for stock buys. I invested in BlackBerry, and you see where that went. Also SodaStream, so don't ask me. But there was a very interesting article in the New York Times yesterday by Farhad Manjoo, who does the tech stuff. And the title of the article was, "Snap Makes a Bet on the Cultural Supremacy of the Camera." And this opened up my eyes not only to what Snapchat may mean, maybe he's wrong, may mean, but to a greater extent, it was a much larger kind of macro issue about the changing nature of communications driven by the internet. And this, to me, was particularly interesting, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to go live with this this morning. Also, it's kind of gray outside, so I get to point this out the window. Normally, it's much too bright, but this is a better background than the library. Anyway, what made this particularly interesting, and the thing that I really wanted to talk about, at least this morning, is this notion of a transition in the way that we communicate as a society. This is a macro issue that far transcends Snapchat or anything else, but the article in the Times, and I'm just going to read you one of the paragraphs here, if I can find it. I mean, the whole article is really worth reading, and I think we'll repost this thing in its totality on VJ World as soon as I finish this, because I think this is worth looking at. But he says, Snapchat uncovered something deeper about the camera. Not only could we use pictures to document the world, but we could also use them to communicate. Snapchat, which was first dismissed as a mere sexting app, showed that the right design, a phone's camera could add extra dimension to communication that you couldn't get with text alone. That may be only a start. The growing importance of cameras, of images rather than text, is altering much about culture. It's transforming many pieces of personal relationships, blah, blah, blah. The essence of the article, which I found fascinating, is that we are going through an enormous cultural transition from a print-driven society, which we've been since for the last 500 years, to a society driven by images. This, in fact, mirrors one of the best books that I ever read called The Alphabet versus the Goddess, by my old and recently, unfortunately, departed friend Leonard Schlein, who also said that we were going through a cultural transition, that society had gone through a cultural transition with the invention of the printing press, where it went from an oral culture, where everything was verbal, to a print culture where everything was written down. Now it seems we're going from a print culture where everything is written down to a visual culture where everything is basically images. And that's what we're doing here. I could write this down as an essay and publish it, and probably nobody except my mother would read the thing because it's just too turgid anymore. We like instant communication, and frankly, it's much easier to do this than to sit and type the thing out with my fingers, which will probably go away anyway. Who can type on a phone to begin with? But the notion of a transition from a print-driven culture to a visual culture, an image culture, is a fascinating one, and it may be that this guy is right, and it may be that that's the reason that Snapchat has such fascination for people, and it may be the reason that's Mark Zuckerberg, 2 or 3 months ago, said that in 5 years he thinks almost all of Facebook is going to be driven by video. It's much easier in many ways to communicate some ideas by video. Now, the thing about communicating in terms of visual, and Snapchat, of course, is stills, but I have no doubt, they probably have started video already, that as with Greshams Law, where less powerful, wealthier, more valuable currencies drive out the more valuable ones, the same thing is going to happen here, that video is ultimately going to drive out the power of stills, and the stills certainly have driven out the power of text. If you go to rent an apartment and you put a 2-line text ad in, you're not going to get anything. If you put in photographs, you'll get more, and ultimately we're going to get to the point where if you put in video, it's going to be the only way that you'll be able to sell your apartment or get rid of it. So this transition from a print-driven culture to a video or image-driven culture is enormously important. The problem is that most people are not video literate. That is, that there is more to communicating ideas with video than simply turning on the camera and talking to it, as I'm doing here, or making CNN-type turgid, terrible pieces, the grammar of which for television news hasn't changed in about 50 years. So there's an opportunity here to kind of reinvent the language, and that's certainly one of the things that we've been playing with at thevj.com, which I urge you to go and visit. But as well, it's something that we can all participate in as we all start to create video and begin to work with video as a medium of communication. And this is critically important, because if this is going to become the primary means of communication, it's critically important that it be taken out of the hands of a couple of networks and put in the hands of average people, because we are the ones who will create the content. The driver in this whole thing, of course, is iPhones and smartphones, because for the first time, iPhones and smartphones make it possible for you to create video like I'm doing now for free, share it with the world like I'm doing now for free. You have it with you all the time. It's kind of like a pencil is to a writer. It's a ubiquitous tool that you have all the time. But unless you understand the grammar and you know what to do with it, this is a total waste of time. So let me put another pitch in here for the thevj.com, which is our online training website. You don't have to go there, but I would recommend that you do it. In any event, I'm going to repost this article in its totality, because this whole notion of transiting from a print text-driven culture to a television or video or image-driven culture is enormously important. To me, Donald Trump is the definitive proof, beyond doubt, that we are far along in this transformation. If that guy had to communicate and express his ideas in writing, which he does in Twitter, I mean, nobody would follow him anywhere. But the fact is, the guy was fantastic television. He understood how to use the medium. He understood how to communicate with people through images, essentially, and it's the image of himself. The way he had the plane behind when he got off the thing, and the way he had... I remember once when he was doing one of his rallies, and he turned to the camera and he said, "Show how many people there are in this thing." And of course, the cameraman sat there. He goes, "Turn the camera around." The cameraman sat there. But in point of fact, he was right, because this whole Nuremberg rally kind of a visual thing is enormously powerful in a culture that is driven entirely by images, which is what we are. So this makes it even more important to not leave the power of images and the power of video and the power of this new kind of grammar in the hands of people like Donald Trump, for crying out loud. What he can do, we can all do, but it will only happen if you pick up the tools and start to do it and start to communicate in this way. And Snapchat is great with the funny pictures and the dollar bills coming out of your mouth and the butterflies and all that crap, but let's be honest, it is crap. There are really important issues to deal with in this culture, and if we're going to use this medium properly, we're going to use it to change the world and to make it better, and not to just communicate bullshit, which is what that thing does. So the potential is here, but it's only going to turn into something if each and every one of us takes the step and becomes literate in the medium and actually starts to use it. And that's what I really urge all of you to do. So, Richard, how are you? Nice to see you. Ryan, nice to see you. Glad you guys could join me. We're actually going to start doing real webinars, because I think that's the best use of this medium. So keep your eye on our mailings and stuff. If you're not on our mailing list, let us know. But I think this notion, I'm really into this notion of embracing this medium for something worthwhile. You know, I used to teach at NYU, and when I started, I only had 12 students in my class, and when I finished, I had 350. So there's something to be said there. Urbano Garcia Alonso, buenos dias, Urbano, from Spain. This medium has enormous potential, and I'm going to start doing much more in-depth webinars, but we're going to, instead of just popping off live like this, we're going to start to set up dates and really do it and really deal with some intelligent subjects, because this thing can do much more than just communicate stupid pictures on Snapchat, and that's what we're going to try and prove and bring everybody into the fold. So that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in, and keep your eyes on our mailing, and go check out thevj.com, VJ World. See you later.